Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Fan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam! Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kelber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, and I'm joined, as always, by Jose Fuentes.
Hello.
Well, you'll notice we are a bit shy today. That is because David Rios is currently on a trip, so he will not be with us this week. And Kasisi Harris has moved over to the Wednesday show. So if you want to catch Kasisi...
He's betrayed us.
Yes, he has.
He's a name who shall not be spoken. He's betrayed us.
He'll still be on when he can, but for the most part, he has moved over to Wednesday show. We will be having some new talent join us. We hope for it to be this week, but it looks like they may have to be weeks in the future. But don't worry, we will still be a crew of 4, and just as off topic as always.
Tonight, when we're good at something, we stick to it, right?
Exactly, that's our brand. Tonight's topic is going to be creating compelling superheroes. But before we get into that, Jose, what has been your media intake for this week? What have you read, played, watched, anything like that?
Still been playing Baldur's Gate because I'm the slowest video game player in the whole wide world.
Well, it's also a very long game.
That doesn't inspire me much there, Tim. I didn't know that.
Well, it's like you're playing through a D&D campaign, all right? You get as much out of it as you put into it, yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. And then reading, I started reading Old Guard again.
Okay.
Like an image book about a group of soldiers across time that can't die and whatnot.
Nice.
Yeah, I started reading that again.
Okay. I don't know if I'm too familiar with Old Guard. It sounds familiar, but
they made a movie out of it. What's her name? Furiosa was in it.
Oh, yeah, right. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. The movie was all right. I think it followed pretty close, but not obviously
Sure.
like a typical movie doesn't go 100%.
Yeah. For myself, playing wise, got back onto Elder Scrolls Online a little bit, so bouncing between that and Final Fantasy 14. Also was at a BattleTech narrative tournament on Sunday. So
What's a narrative tournament?
yeah, so it was they took a bit from the books, from the lore that the Battle of Tukid. They had half the players picked a clan faction, half the players picked a Comstar or Inner faction, and you can only use mechs that were available during this time period. And you played through a scenario that represented the idea of how it's set up, and like creating the idea of it's a take and hold ground in these different valleys or cities.
Interesting. So it's kind of like in the movie Gladiator when they were reenacting like battles from the past. That's cool.
Yeah, and then tallied up points at the end, and whichever side had the most points ended up winning that. And in the lore, Comstar and the Innisphere wins. In our tournament, the clans actually won by 10 points. So I was leading the clan faction. I was Clan Wolf, so we took that victory that day. It was great.
Right on.
Watching wise, started finally watching Legend of Vox Machina, the cartoon based on Critical Role.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying that. And reading wise, finally started reading Black Company. Somehow that evaded my radar for so long.
Black Company.
The Black Company, yeah. From what I have gathered, it's always been in my peripheral because I know that it is the book series that kind of created a modern understanding of dark fantasy.
Okay.
Like if you like Labyrinth, if you like Game of Thrones, or even like some of the stuff that D&D did, especially like if you like the Dragonlance books, apparently like what Glenn Cook did for the Black Company is kind of what inspired a lot of that.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to have to look it up.
So I started with that. I haven't not anything past the original trilogy. I found the original trilogy collected at Barnes & Noble, so I just picked that up.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm also dying from pollen, so.
What?
Dying from pollen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing.
So very mucusy. Okay.
I would know.
Yeah. Have you? Is it just the part of Florida doesn't have a lot of allergies, or have you just never been allergic?
So I've never really been allergic. What I do get is like when spring comes, that's when I kind of get a little like nasally and whatnot. I don't know if that's pollen or everyone opens their window and dust fills the earth.
Right. Yeah.
But I know like around springtime, my mom would just open every window in the house because I'm from Indiana. It was all cold, and so like we get cold breeze in, but like we just dust everything out. You know what I mean? All the winter stuff. So.
All right. Yeah. Unfortunately, over here in Oregon, once the cottonwood hits in spring, it doesn't leave until winter. So,
right.
Yeah. You end up just seeing like, yeah.
Man, I mean, I know the trees that are over there. The trees and the plants are like any indication. Man, it's got to be freaking pollen for days. I mean, like we would get snow in Pennsylvania. I would imagine that's the level of pollen you guys get.
Yeah, literally like entire walkways or like streets covered up like an inch that you can't see through. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Like I said, tonight we're talking about creating compelling comic book heroes. So, for I guess kind of the general introductory into the topic, we can go over the definition of a hero. I don't know if there's necessarily like one set definition for a hero. It is something that's kind of synonymous with comic books, just kind of, the comic book hero, right? Being muscle bound.
I think it depends on on the decade, right? Depending on the decade,
the
that's from
decade,
type of hero.
yeah, on the decade, on the publisher, like on the imprint, like
Yeah.
yeah. There's kind of the trope, the stereotype of comic book hero being muscle bound, wearing spandex, underwear on the outside, being just a little bit too patriotic, and you know, the cheesy one-liners. But that is not necessarily the case. It's certainly not the case for like the same character all the way throughout their lifespan as a character in comics. So I guess I'll ask you, Jose, do you have a definition for a hero in the context of comic books?
Hmm. Let's see. You know me, I'm an OG gamer. Hero has to be lawful good, right?
Okay.
Like so it has to be the good guy. It has to be the knight in shiny armor. It has to be the guy who, is gonna walk the old lady across the road,
Mm-hmm.
like in the middle of a fight with the big nasty.
Yeah.
But that's the definition of a hero to me. And then, like I said, I know according to decades, you know what I mean. In the '90s, heroes got a little weirder, a little more gritty.
Dark, yeah.
Yeah, less hero-y, you know what I mean? Like Superman with his spit curl, you know what I mean? But that's when, for me, you know what I mean, was it the '80s and whatnot? That's superhero time, right? Because you had Super Friends, you had, you know what I mean? Like even any of the Hanna-Barbera characters, Space Ghost, you
Yeah.
know, all like iconic superhero. And, you know, you kind of have that superhero like silhouette, you know what I mean? That you have
Mm-hmm.
to me, has to fit with you. Your superhero has to fit within that parameter for the most part.
There you go. Yeah. Um, yeah, I think similarly, I think if you're looking like not just like a protagonist, because I think like if you look at like a protagonist, that'll change wildly based on like because it's simply who the perspective
Right.
the comic is written from. I'd say there are some Venom comics where Venom is a hero, and some Venom comics where Venom is just a protagonist or an anti-hero, depending on
Right.
who's writing them. So for me, a definition of a hero in the context of comic books is a character that stands as either a metaphor or champion for some sort of uh, socially positive ethical trait. Not to get like, hey guys, I minored in philosophy, but it's kind of the same idea where like your idea of a hero is someone who's lawful good. I think a hero could be chaotic good, but they have to be like the idea of like the standing for some sort of like socially positive ethic, right?
Right.
The idea
That's
of
fair.
Spider-Man is like the champion of community, and he's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, right? Like before he got into Avengers and all that, he was just doing what was good for his like couple blocks of New York.
Right.
Doctor Strange is the pursuit of knowledge and progress in a way that is beneficial to others, using it to protect them. Does that sometimes bite him in the butt? Usually, but
You were gonna say mostly, yeah.
yes, but that's so that positive idea of like you can use knowledge and progress to benefit people around you. And so a hero is someone who has to be a champion for an ethic like that. And then if you want to have but the hero does not necessarily need to be the protagonist of your storyline.
Right.
But if you're talking about heroes, that's kind of where I think the line is like you have to have something to aspire to in the character.
Yeah, I can see
Yeah.
that.
Right.
I mean, sort of, right? I
Yeah.
mean, what is Captain America aspiring to?
Well, it's not necessarily like Captain America is what he's aspiring to, but what we as the reader can aspire to in Captain America, and the idea that,
Okay.
Captain America is the he's the fight for the little guy because he used to be a little guy and he knows what it's like to be picked on. So many of his storylines like, hey, don't pick on this guy.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. I can see that. Superman is kind of the same principle. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We kind of hit on that. Now let's talk about the relatability of those hero characters. This is something that Stan Lee's core two principles was having a character that was stood up for something and was relatable. Like he didn't talking about like Spider-Man specifically. He wanted to when he's creating Spider-Man, he said he wanted to have a kid that had problems because people at some points were kids with problems.
Yeah, I mean, it's not wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so having a hero like Spider-Man, like, you know, he stands up for like being the champion of this like community and neighborhood and all that stuff, and then dealing with family issues, deaths in the family, dealing with relationship issues, and like being kind of a geek and a weirdo.
We can all relate to the geek and weirdo aspect.
Yes. Oh, and we have and our new host maybe joining us here in a second.
That'd be cool.
Adding that layer of relatability. This is something that usually ends up happening on the writer side of things, but can also happen somewhere on the visual side of things, where it becomes more of the art department handling how a character relates to the reader. I mean, regardless of kind of where you stand on her or how you feel about her as a character, Kamala Khan was a character that was originally created to be visually relatable because she's created by a couple of Pakistanis living in New York. And like, well, we just made a hero that was us.
Right.
Yeah. And so you made a character that visually looked like the people who were writing it. That kind of idea. And relatability and depth of characters thing can be like, it can have varying levels of importance. Different readers and also just to the character in general. So I guess Jose, I'll open up to you. Is there any point where you really put any thought into the idea of how you relate to a hero character? Like, do they have like similar background to you, and then you're like, oh, that's kind of neat, or something like anything like that?
Well, I mean, background wise, I know I say that, I lived in a town, right, where there were no minorities, right? It was literally a bunch of Caucasian people and 5 Hispanic kids, and I was one of those 5. That was it
Yeah.
in this town. I love my town. I love my town growing up. You know what I mean? But definitely caught some like attitude from people, caught some bullying. I'll be honest. You know what I mean? But I also wrote a comic book story of a kid who has like lightning powers, and he kind of cuts loose with lightning powers from being bullied, right? So
Yeah.
yes, to me, he's the hero of the story, but I mean, he's definitely not the good. He's not Superman by any means, you know.
Yeah.
Closer to like, let's say 90s Batman. Because you
Sure.
can't even say like 80s Batman, because even 80s Batman, like back in the day, I didn't even know Batman had a dark past. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was just, I was never, because I mean, I didn't necessarily read Batman growing up, but not like I do now, but I definitely watched the cartoons. You know what I mean? That was kind of my intro to a lot of the characters, and that's what made me want to read when DC started putting out the DC Who's Who. I wanted to know more about the past of characters, right? So I like to, I guess I say that to say, I mean, if I'm going to make a character, I want to be relatable to me. You know what I mean? I'm going to be able to tell
Yeah.
a story that I, for one, have either been through or like have an at least empathetic connection to.
Yeah. That's kind of, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the core thing is like you write what you know, and also to some aspect, like you draw what you know. Like, all my characters have something like some sort of either physical tell or emotional tell that something that I've experienced at some point in my life. So and then that gets put into character. And when I am consuming as well, that's also something that I do look for in other characters, and like if someone presents in a certain way or talks in a certain way, or then I am more likely to follow more of their stuff compared to other people's.
Right.
Yeah. Something that is in my friend group jokingly called my red flag character is Quentin Quire.
Yeah.
The idea of the talented and gifted kid who was definitely not paying like too irreverent in school to really succeed.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, no, I get that, and they're like, that's kind of red flag. I know, but he turns out good in the end.
Goodish.
Goodish, yeah. It takes him dying a couple times in X Force and getting pushed around by Wolverine to really come into his own. But yeah,
Right.
yeah.
He's an interesting character.
Yeah. It's also it is also interesting because his timeline going from essentially like his finishing high school shortly after I like went through high school and then going through college around the same time and then like moving into career fields. Having like grown up alongside a character like that is something that doesn't necessarily happen in comics because Batman's been 35 for 60 years. But having a character that actually ages out in a way that is almost on par with time outside of the comic universe, it's
Right.
interesting. And so I think that's also another reason why I like Quentin so much.
Well, I think they did the same thing with a few other characters. Like some characters, like Miles Morales, I feel that they
Yeah.
aged him way too quickly. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
just way too fast. And I think they did a few, but like Kitty Pryde had a really long
Yeah, right.
like
Yeah.
maturation, I guess.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Time window. Because when she started out with X-Men stuff like that. And Jubilee to me is still a young kid, even though she adopted Shiro and
Yeah.
became a vampire and all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Jubilee, when you get into like the stuff beyond what people like know from like the cartoons, it's like, do you want to have a character that feels like an acid trip?
You're right.
Yeah.
Like, man.
Yeah. But yeah, I think also a lot of new X-Men and Gen X kind of age up in the same way. But for me, that was Quentin Quire. So we're getting into it, and the idea of like developing a character's backstory, and a lot of what I find compelling when I'm reading a hero is how well their backstory or their character outside of the comic interacts with the reality now that they're inside the comic, right? The idea that they feel real because they have stuff that happened to them that they pull on that then helps them with the stuff they're interacting. It doesn't feel like they exist solely for the plot. Because everyone's like read that story where there's no personality to the character. They're just there to do A, B, and C because the story demands them to do A, B, and C.
Right.
But when you have a character that says like, well, no, I can't do B because this thing happened to me in the past, and I know how that affected me, so I can't do B. Things like that, where you can create where the character has these moments of personal history, and I think that can be really important to create in a compelling superhero, is especially like it's the definition of black and white character, but I like Sentinel because Sentinel's backstory is what keeps him from being the most powerful hero in Marvel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Things like that. So
Oh, and that's I mean, that's fairly new for the most part. You know what I mean? When it like in the idea of like even like nowadays a superhero, you know, like I said, Batman, all like yeah, we all knew his background basically for the most part, but then it kind of got darker and darker and darker. Like, but it wasn't like, oh, you know, need to make him the brooding bat, even though that's kind of the meme and the joke about it. But
yeah.
it's supposed to help like develop like a character. You understand that yeah, back in like I said, back in the '80s, he was like kind of fun, kind of happy, and jumping in with Scooby Doo and stuff like that, right? But as like it progressed like in the years, you know, you learn like, oh yeah, wait a minute, he actually has an obsession. Like this is something he can't stop. Like his brain doesn't stop that. Like so, then the whole. I remember it was the big reveal that oh, Bruce Wayne is the mask, not Batman. Batman is the actual like person and personality, and Bruce Wayne is the facade he puts on, right? And
Yeah.
like we all kind of knew that, but like when the revelation kind of dropped, we're like, whoa, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
But
but yeah,
yeah.
that kind of feeds into more into like developing his storyline, I mean, his reason for being, his reason for doing what he does every night, you know?
hmm And you can spin that for you can exactly you can take that and spin it darker or spin it lighter, and you can see moments where maybe he goes a little too far in pursuing leads or pursuing like catching the bad guy because that is his obsession. But then also see moments where
Right,
he's interacting with the Bat family, and he's like, "No, you do not do what I do because I know how this affected me. So you guys have to be better than me." Looking
right.
specifically at
Well, one of
Dick.
my favorite Batman stories was Lonely Place of Dying. And it was
hmm
it was when they brought, and I'm gonna draw a blank, was it Tim Draken as
Yeah,
the Robin, and like he figured it out. Like he deduced who Batman was, and basically out of all of them, he really was the Robin that was the detective. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But like that was such a great story that not having a Robin, you know what I mean, not having somebody there to temper him, you know what I
yeah,
mean, means that he was a lot more violent, a lot more rough and whatnot. And then having a Robin there allowed him to have to pull back, like, oh, it's not just me, you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's I have to watch out for the person that I'm going into action with.
yeah.
So I
And
thought it
there's
was a great story. Like that was
absolutely,
just to me, it was compelling.
yeah. There's a moment I believe it was in the Joker War, or it might have been more recent. I can't remember exactly what it was. But there's a moment where Huntress came back in as a member of the Bat family for a little bit, and she had to be the person to get on the headset with Batman and be like, "Hey, you're the person who told me to stop killing people, so I'm going to do the same
Right.
thing to you now." um, but yeah, and then also if you look at like the Batman cartoon, the '90s one, um, and how many of those storylines ended instead Batman reforming the villain because he's able to pull on his dark past and say like, I know how this makes me feel, and I know how you're feeling right now,
Right.
and you know I could beat the crap out of you, but instead I'm going to talk to you about what's going on with you.
I remember that being one of the things where like was it the conclusion story to animated for Batman and Joker. Like Joker, they're just kind of related to each other and took a moment to actually laugh.
Yeah,
Pretty cool.
yeah,
But like
the
I mean, that just tells you the kind of hero that Batman is. You know what I mean? It's like,
mhm,
listen, we've got to stop this. Like this is ridiculous. Like
yeah,
we're going to kill each other.
hmm yeah, absolutely. Um, so we kind of hit all my points around backstory and how you can use that to help create a character that feels like they're alive outside of just the moment that you're writing them into. Um, and for me personally, as someone who enjoys a lot of non-genre writing or like higher form literature, not really thing, but for me, the character backstory and the character introduction is usually where I get a lot of my interest in the character. However, as I said before, I am a fan of giant lasers and hyperviolence. And for some people, that is an entire selling point for comics, as they like the cool element of it. And for them, to make a character that is compelling, you need to give them some unique ability or power. Ideally, your character is going to have a unique ability as well as be well-rounded and fully fleshed out. Um, but
Ideally, fully fleshed out.
yeah, yeah. I think everyone's kind of tired of half-baked characters. But
For real.
uh, yeah, but as a creator and a consumer, what's sort of the importance that you put on have a character having some sort of unique ability that's either interesting or visually appealing or anything like that?
I like visually appealing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If they're like one of my favorite Marvel characters is Nightcrawler. And I know so if you think about it, his the way he's always drawn, there is more ink on his body, like black wise in regards to like spot blacks and stuff like that. That I mean he doesn't really have features, right? Let's per se. Like I mean when back in the day he was drawn very dark and then what little spots were open You know what I mean? Gave the impression of like a jawline or cheekbones. You know what I mean? Forehead, a little bit
Yeah.
of curls in his hair. You know what I mean? But it was the band. Every time he teleported, it was always that puff of smoke. And I don't know what it is, but for me, just being able to like have that pop open and then follow it to like whatever next panel is or whatever. Like to me, that was just dynamic. And then they gave him a sword and allowed him to like basically be a swashbuckling pirate. It was over.
Yes.
Nightcrawler was my favorite guy. Like, and I, everyone likes their characters, and like I said, all the '90s, it was Wolverine and whatnot. But Nightcrawler's always been it for me, in regard. But like, he also has a different, like I said, a silhouette. His silhouette is different. Like, if you were to just pull his silhouette up, of his blacked out image of his body and form, I'm gonna be able to know who that is. You know what I mean? Just like his hands, his build, his tail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I like dynamic stuff like that. Which, funny enough, one of the main reasons I started collecting Batman or Detective Comics, more to the fact, is because of Clayface, right?
Yeah.
Because Clayface can be a dude, but he's always just like this ginormous like ball of clay that can form into like other people or other things and whatnot. And to me, that's dynamic too. And I just like his story, like the tragicness of his story and the things that he can do. So yeah, it's for me, it's the dynamic power. It's the you know what I mean? It's what's gonna catch my eye and what they do with the stuff that they have, with the power that they have.
Definitely. I'm also a fan of visual spectacle. Try and grab that Guy Gardner
Oh,
explodifying
that's
in Alien.
yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
Um,
Yeah, I think the Green Lanterns are so cool. Like during what was it? Was it during Rebirth? Like Jeff Johns narrated that. Oh, each ring is like different.
yeah.
When John does his construct, because he was like an architect, everything's very like symmetrical and stuff like that, right? Like, or
Mhm.
military, right? And Kyle Rayner is like him drawing as a comic book artist. You know what I mean? So you see different stuff, and
Yeah.
like Hal Jordan, that was the whole thing with like the movie too. Hal Jordan, it's always like military stuff. It's always like friggin' jet fighters and missiles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite things was that Kilowatts is the only ring that produces a sound. So like when
Mhm.
he uses his ring, it's just like boom, and it's like just that idea is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, we, I believe, are being joined by our new co-host of the Tuesday show, Javier Lugo. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing good. We were just discussing.
We're talking about you. We're talking about superheroes, and you hopped in.
There you go.
Oh wow, how appropriate! I draw superheroes, so
Yes.
all right.
Right.
We were just discussing the importance of we just got done with backstory and the core concepts of a hero, and are getting to making unique and compelling abilities and visuals for them, and how ideally a compelling hero is going to have a well-written backstory and fully fleshed out character core, as well as having something that is visually appealing, visually unique, that is fun to follow and watch.
Yeah, you gotta avoid the pitfall of having your hero way too overpowered to begin with. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's kind of interesting how you can almost see that happen in real time with Superman. As we need to introduce more forms of kryptonite.
Right. Let's tone him down a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you think about the times he was created in, he was a total power fantasy. I mean, what were we going through in the 30s and the 40s? You had all kinds of conflict. You had prohibition times, the beginning of World War II, and he was supposed to be the guy that was able to do stuff that the regular Joes couldn't even imagine. Fighting for justice in the American way when people didn't really believe in that very much or didn't experience that regularly in real life. Yeah, that was super.
Yeah. So this actually kind of brings us to our next bullet point: balancing powers to avoid making the hero too powerful. And this is something that it happens both on the writing side and the visual aspect of it. Especially if you're writing in a universe that has other heroes existed, or a team. If someone's powers are an absolute spectacle on the page, then everyone else is like, why am I looking at other people doing stuff on the page when I just want to see this one person do a thing?
Right.
And of course, there are exceptions to that, but and this is something that Jose I could probably talk to you about. But balancing the heroes at some points almost feels like you're balancing a party in D&D, right? The idea that I'm going to give you just enough tools to make you be able to this fight has a chance of killing you. I'm giving you just enough tools that if you roll that nat 20, you're going to get it.
Right.
And some of the best.
You don't want to overpower your players.
Yeah. And some of the best, and most compelling stories for our heroes are those moments where it feels like in the last dire moments they rolled that nat 20 on the whatever roll that allowed them to, Captain America to reach over, grab a shield, and bash Red Skull off of him, or another Captain America reference. But
It's that perfect ricochet.
Ricochet. Another Captain America reference, but the moment where he rolls a nat 20 on the persuasion check to get Nuke to stand down when Nuke is about to just absolutely tear him apart.
Well, you also don't want to make your heroes be subservient to random luck either.
Yeah.
They got to have some kind of agency, of their own.
Yeah. It's all about the tools you give them, and it's just that hero is the one person who knows how to use that tool just right in the right moment to get over whatever obstacle that you have thrown in their way as the writer.
Yeah, that's something people can empathize with as well. I mean, if you know how to do one thing really well, then you rely on that all the time. And it just makes you even better at that skill. I mean, whatever it is, So what do they say? 10,000 hours makes you an expert at everything?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, what is that realistically speaking? I'm not good at math, but, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks, I don't know, that's 2,000 hours. So in about 5 years, you're great at whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm an amazing sleeper.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm an expert at eating as well. Yeah.
Right? Heck yeah. I was an expert eating at hibachi tonight.
Yes. Kasisi, now over at the Wednesday show, so make sure to give him some over there. Zenitsu and Demon Slayer mastered one skill and is completely overpowered. Absolutely. Crap, what's that guy's name? Zenitsu, yeah. The sleeping fighter gets so scared he passes out, and then in his passed out stage, he's able to one-shot most things.
Well, that's something I've noticed in manga a lot is that to make the stories interesting, the character has to uber develop and very, very quickly, because if they show up in 8-page stories in Shonen Jump or something like that, then they don't have a lot of time to earn an audience. So they have to have progression very quickly, and you'll notice that pattern. They start off getting super powerful very quickly, and then they got to slow it down. Once they gain an audience, they kind of figure out, okay, wait a minute, this is going somewhere, and they're keeping me on the periodical. And then you see that happening as it goes on. Then they have to figure out, wait a minute, I made him overpowered. How do I bring him down? So you elevated his competition, but then that forces him to do another leap forward, and that's how you end up with overpowered characters. 30 issues.
Demon Slayer is an interesting example, because Demon Slayer, the first little they skip over doing the overly long backstory, but they kind of come to understand these are all the kids in their trial to become official Demon Slayers after they've spent 3 to 10 years studying under a master as a single master to student. Entire kid, climb up and down the mountain 15 times a day, otherwise you can't eat. But something I like about that is why I've always liked comparing the Dragon Ball scaling compared to other things. Is yes, Dragon Ball has the most insane like Super Saiyan God 3, whatever. But also, they give them so many things like, okay, Goku does this. It doesn't work out. He dies. He starts training in heaven for months at a time.
Right.
He wins his way to come back to life. He does this. He fails. He starts training in the time chamber for months at a time. And it's kind of the anime. It's like, hey, kids, you know what pays off? Going to the gym.
Yeah. Okay, I get that. By the way, I'm thinking I got 1 dot right there. I'm missing what, 5 more? But that's just me.
Just means you need to level up, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, Krillin saved the world more times than any other fighters that aren't Saiyans. All right. So we kind of talked about the idea of creating flaws and vulnerabilities. We haven't really gone too deep into that yet. But what, of course, makes a character feel more, and these aren't just super hard flaws, but also moral failings. But can make a character even more compelling, more relatable, is the idea that they have some sort of downfall or weakness, because everyone has at some point hit something that's been the rock bottom, where they had some sort of struggle they had to overcome in order to do what they're doing or they're currently working through. The 2 examples I have down here, because I've said before, I'm a Marvel fanboy, but Iron Man's alcoholism, and also Wolverine's rage. The idea that there are several storylines that revolve on Iron Man just not being up to the task because he has gotten too drunk the night before and cannot operate his suit. Or moments where, I think there was a Marauders storyline where they get absolutely nothing out of the Marauders that they encountered in Sinestro, because Wolverine just kills them all. And it was like kind of like, all right, there goes all the clones, but I guess we have no leads on where they took Kitty. Great, Logan. Good.
Good job.
Yeah.
Well, a berserker rage shouldn't be a positive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a total loss of self.
Yeah.
Psychologically speaking, that only happens and when you go in the opposite direction, ultimate lust, ultimate anger.
Yeah.
And in either case, there's always a version of shame that happens after when you reconsider, wow, why did I do that? And do I ever want to be there again? Yeah, it can be very tricky, and it shouldn't be seen as a positive. I'll just go berserker mode, when I pick it. Then is that the character saying I control it? Then it's not berserker rage, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's valid. I don't see, and I haven't read Marvel in a while, but I didn't, for the longest time, I never really saw where they showed that. They gave that depiction like, oh, crap, I snapped again.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, guys. You know what I mean? It was never like that. I was like, oh, Wolverine just went nuts, and he's cleared a path. Let's keep on moving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not to quote, not to say about, bring back D&D, but that's, you kind of have those characters that you rely on this particular offensive character to go and handle everything while you wait for everyone to clear the path and then keep on going. You rely too much on that.
If you bring that offensive character into a social scene, like what sometimes would happen where Wolverine is coming off, he's hot-headed, and then Scott says something he doesn't like, and he starts going off on Scott, or he has moments where he starts slashing at Colossus, and Colossus is like, all right, hey, bud.
Right.
But, in some moments where, this character, and they kind of tap into it at some points, especially with Wolverine, but they have, enabling someone's negative trait and be like, yeah, we really need it in this one situation, but then when it comes back into a situation that's not appropriate, now it's a disaster, and now people need to have a talking to moment. Also in the X-Men, Scott's ability to be a leader and commander can also be very controlling and very manipulative, as you kind of see at Utopia Downfall and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can see how Cyclops and Wolverine are both ends. Cyclops is ultimate control over yourself, and Wolverine's berserker rage is the ultimate loss of self. If I remember correctly, the Berserker Rage is a thing from what is the Scottish Warriors?
Yeah. Well, it's Norse. Yeah.
Okay. So in essence, basically, they would pretty much just strip themselves naked, foam at the mouth, paint themselves with war paints, and basically they would just toss them out there, and none of their allies will be nearby because the Berserker Rage was just they just see red and just kill anything that moves, including animals and people. And you know that's appropriate for Logan's type of power set. But it's not something you want to be nearby because chances are in their rage they're just gonna chop your head off too or run you through with a sword.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, then Scott requires accountability because not only does he need you to be disciplined while you're doing your actions, but afterwards he's gonna toss you in the danger room and test you on it again.
No. Absolutely. Scott is one of my favorite characters because of the way that his power set almost seems to be less so with his kinetic blast and more so the ability to like put together a like competent structure. But then you'll end up seeing moments like when he's written well, he's written in a way that is compelling and realistic, and that has that like moment where he makes that decision that like you're like I don't like that, but I get it. But the moment where like Emma Frost says something that like just gets under skin a little bit and like questions his orders just a little bit and like, hey, is this really the right thing? And then he starts off like, hey, this is my plan. You do it or you're off the team. And you're like, all right, I get it, man, but like you're being kind of a jerk about it.
Well, when you're in a position of power like that, you can get away with being an absolute jerk.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Absolutely. Okay.
And here's the thing: the worst thing about it is that sometimes the jerk is right. That's what the rest of us got to swallow.
Yeah,
because they can come up with the bigger plans, the bigger macro view of things, and the strategy. And then when they start telling you what to do, and you're like, "Who are you to tell me what to do? I know what I can do. I got my power set. What the hell?" And then they end up doing exactly what's right. Then they got to turn around and say, "Yeah, okay, Emma, I guess you were right." And Emma will throw it in their face.
I'll never admit that.
Yeah. There's always been those interesting moments where you'll have, like this was a early 2000s thing, but you have moments where you'd have Scott and Sam Guthrie butt heads because they're like, hey, I have this plan. No, I have this plan. Here's my team. No, I want to use my team for this. And like, they're both not wrong, but they're both at a moment where like they're so used to being in charge that like it becomes that moment of they're playing into each other's moral downfalling.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't reading X-Men at that time. Okay.
I'd listen to Cannonball before I listen to Scott.
A lot of stuff like post Necrotia. Okay. The next nipple I have here is, I mean, we've been talking about teams for a lot, but this kind of, X-Men team has been my longest read team comic. But when you get into the idea of maybe more so of a solo character and a storyline and making them particularly compelling, you also need to have supporting characters that find ways to elevate or enhance your main character, either in moments of giving them positive or negative relationships, but it needs to have something that has a tangible effect on the storyline and the way it presents in the comic. So I guess I'll open this up here, but I kind of open up to you guys for your thoughts on this. But the idea of supporting characters that really serve well in fleshing out the hero's world and fleshing out the hero's relationship and dynamic. And also how those relationships can actually drive the narrative. What are some examples you guys can think of and how those have played out?
Well, I like supporting characters.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead,
All right. Well, I can point out like Punisher and Microchip way back in the day.
Yeah.
I can also observe that secondary characters are there to make observations that the main character cannot.
Mm-hmm.
And that serves as also exposition for the reader. You don't want your main character explaining everything they're doing. That's why you have them react and interact with regular people, so they can be like, "Oh my gosh, did he just leap, 3 stories?" So that way you can elevate the immersion by offering up, ground point of view through your stories, through your secondary characters, and how the main characters or main villain, for that matter, are the outlier. They're the 1%ers. They're the ones that are all one of the few that can do what they do. And also, you can have those secondary characters pay the price for the hero's failure or for the villain's plots.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the thing is like, you don't necessarily need to don't want to walk yourself into the wife in the fridge moment, but having a character where you allow them to have so many moments of them almost necessarily stealing the spotlight, but then when you have a character like Superman where it's very hard to give the stakes necessarily beyond Superman going down, but if someone ever finds out who Lois is or goes after Lois, then suddenly there are tangible stakes for that Superman storyline.
All right. Well, wasn't that what happened during was it Injustice? Wasn't it Joker killed off Lois or something like that, and so Superman kind of just went nuts.
Yeah.
This is what happens when when something major happens to Superman. And Joker did the same thing to not Batman, but Commissioner Gordon, and you know what I mean, and Killing Joke, you know what I mean, shot Barbara and took all kinds of pictures and whatnot, and then sent Commissioner Gordon through a roller coaster of slideshows and stuff like that to try and make him go crazy. The principle, the idea was that one bad day can change your entire life. You know what I mean?
This is Judge Dredd, and a sidekick works well to delve deeper into him as a character. Yeah, Judge Dredd kind of has that same thing as a Punisher. You need that microchip character. You need that sidekick character because he's not going to talk about himself. He is Punisher's one of those characters that for the longest time is I don't understand what personal growth is. It sounds like something I need to put a gun to.
Right.
Judge. Yeah.
In a way, the Punisher truly was just rage against what people were feeling in the 70s. That helplessness, that drugs and crime are taking over everything everywhere all at the same time, that desperation. And just look at the movies Death Wish with I can't remember the guy's name, but that series of movies where that genre was very big. Marlon Branson. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's that's a product of his time, but after you have that zero growth from Amazing Spider-Man to other stuff. Thank you, Kassisi. Great call. You have to develop, especially if you're going to put him in a limited series and then eventually his own series. Yeah, he has to become more than one-dimensional. And Microchip is his not his foil, but his counterpart. He's the one that humanizes him and allows the character to grow. If he has no relationships, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah. So this is something that it's more so the if you were a contractor or a ground pounder, you get that contract, the idea of Microchip to Punisher, and that Punisher being infantry, even infantry leaders, your task is you're assigned a door, your job is to kick it in, complete the mission, execute. Microchip being an intelligence contractor, his job is to really hack apart the entire everything in front of him, distrust it, and find the real truth behind what's being presented to him. So his entire job is to think, whereas Punisher's entire job was to take action. So having that moment where they're you create a good combative synergy where one character is pushing action, one character is pushing more thought. And they can both drive each other to be better in terms of, moments where Microchip is too passive, moments where Punisher is too impulsive. You have moments like that with Brain died. Yep. Captain Falcon. Before Falcon really earned his own spot, the idea of Cap being a little more straightforward and Falcon's be like, okay, I can fly. We can find alternate paths.
Right.
Yeah. And kind of characters forcing each other to think in different ways that isn't necessarily in their their core structure.
Yeah, and finally, I would say that Microchip is also there to kind of show that Frank Castle is not there.
No,
he is not a normal man in normal society.
Mm-hmm.
He cannot be reintegrated into society. By definition, from his experiences and his decisions, even though he's protecting society in his own mind, in his own way, he can never be a part of this society anymore. Because he just can't think like a regular Joe anymore. Everybody's an enemy. Right. Everybody's a plot. Everybody has a gun and a bullet aiming at him, and all he knows is violence. And that's the life he's chosen, and that life reinforces that message every time he interacts with another set of criminals. He's just saying, yeah, I knew I was right before. This revalidates it again and again and again, and that's why he continues doing what he's done.
Absolutely.
So, you're saying Microchip keeps them tethered, so to speak?
It's a mirror at Frank saying, "You're insane, bro. I love you. I'm enabling you, but you're insane."
Mm-hmm.
And if you can accept that, like I can accept you, then we'll go forward. That's just me guessing, man. I don't know what Mike Barron and any of these writers were thinking at the time, but that's what I can, guess from his actions and reactions and the stories at the beginning, at least. I mean, once he became an angelic, demon hunter thing,
Marvel Knights.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of what we were talking about earlier with Batman and the various Robins, and each Robin helped Batman deal with a certain trauma from his past, right?
Right.
Tim Drake is the one who saw Batman for Batman. Dick Grayson is kind of the same time as the Huntress question poster. I was like, hey, you told me to not just murder ball people. Have you considered that yourself? But then you have moments where you end up getting the spinoff Red Hood and Arsenal, where it just became hey, we're going to take all the worst traits that our mentors passed down to us and just roll with it.
Right. I'm going to be the murder hobo.
Yes. And we're going to wear puffy jackets and trucker hats, and I'm all for that in character design.
That's right.
More comic characters, trucker hats.
Yes.
I didn't understand that so much.
Hopefully everybody remembers the time that, Speedy Jr. did that thing with the cat. Oh, my Lord. That was horrible. But hey.
Yes, Roland is in the chat, and yes, Javier did indeed make it. So he's been joining us for
the boss checking in. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, let me share a progress shot here real quick.
There we go. Let me get you the main screen. Nice.
Oh, nice.
Just a little Conan there.
Yeah.
I'll have it set up the next time so you can. Yeah, I can have the camera just pointing at it. Yeah,
that's all right. Yeah. There you go. And kind of talking about that as it relates to side characters, but now we'll take it into for our last bit here, talking about the characters moving forward. I mentioned this for why I think Quentin Quire has been so compelling for me as a character that stuck with me, and why I think some of the characters have stuck around for as long as they have, despite staying 35 since the 1930s. Is the idea of characters that can evolve and grow, and it's something we mentioned in your comics writing class is that if you're writing for someone's main publication, you have to return to a point of stasis after everything's settled. You can't necessarily you can't blow up the world necessarily unless the editor gives you a thumbs up. But you can have the hero walk away with a lesson learned, or or if you're Miller, give a character a new trauma. But the idea of it, you can have characters that do have their own development, their own growth. For me, this is Quentin Quire because it's the character that literally grew up on par with myself and going from the high school angst to the college neurosis to developing your own sense of empathy and sympathy and how that presents itself. I guess also if you're talking about compelling moral downfalls, being a character is diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, right? It's not something necessarily that people like. For people to deal with that, that can be a big deal. It's I can be a positive influence. But I'm sure for other people, they probably have seen other characters where they have had, witnessed that creative growth or whatever, and that storyline has stuck out particularly to them. For a lot of people, that is Iron Man's devil in the bottle, right? The idea of Iron Man defeating alcoholism, right? Or and his continued arc that is still something that is off and on, but Iron Man's once they started doing these more long-form storylines, Iron Man's innate selfishness versus where he is now, there is a very stark difference in his level of being self-centered. And it's still there, but there's
right.
So open for you guys, is this something that you, either in creating or consuming something that you've noticed in characters that has drawn you to them, or even is it something you even consider at all?
I would say there's a difference between what we consume versus what we create.
Yeah.
These characters have to evolve over time to maintain an audience, to gain new audiences. So before the alcoholism was a problem, it wasn't a problem. He was an alcoholic in the Vietnam era, and none of that stuff showed up until they had to find something new, a different challenge that not only for him, but that people can see in their real life. And it was a brilliant idea. Was it David Michelini and Bob Layton that were doing that? So I see that. But when we're creating our own heroes, maybe I can have something in mind, some kind of weakness for them, but it's not something I want to put out there the first issue, or in the first storyline. To be honest with you, because everybody knows people have feet of clay. Every character has a feet of clay. Every character has some kind of character, positive and negative trait that makes them more relatable. So I don't want to expose that too quickly. Because we're just starting a relationship with new readers. Now, once the first 4 issues are done, then you can start exploring, version 2, version 3. But when you're creating new stuff, the way I see it, you need to get to the point very quickly, because you only have so much ability to produce books. I mean, we can't release 12 issues in a year, so I can't have a 3-year plan for 36 issues. Because I'm not a comic book producing company.
Yeah.
So if I could produce 1 book a year or 2 books a year, then my storylines have to be done in 2 issues, which means you got to trim the fat. You get character development. That 2 issues are not for character development. That's for character exposure.
Right.
Yeah.
That's to expose your product, to expose your ideas, your concepts, and your higher, overall themes. But when it comes to what we consume, it's very different. I mean, I'm watching TV shows, and they look like movies, but they move like TV shows. So just tonight, I was watching, what was it, Your Honor, and I'm like, wow, they're taking a lot of time in establishing the automobile accident and how the kid responds. And mostly in movies, that's 2 minutes, boom, done, because you only have 90 minutes. But on a TV series, you can have 8 episodes at 30, 45 minutes each. So you have 3 times the amount of time to get into the nitty-gritty of why these characters are motivated this way. Who made the biggest mistake? What are the consequences of these mistakes, realistically speaking? So that's the realm of graphic novels. That's the realm of serial storytelling that bigger publishers can explore.
Well, they have, like you said, they have more time to do it. You know what I mean? More time to make that happen. You know what I mean? When they put out multiple books. I mean, I like characters with, with flaws. I like characters that, like, one of the characters I created for a Western. He has, his overlying story or underlying story is a conviction of, of faith, or you know what I mean, throughout the whole thing. Is he forsaken? Is he, what I mean? Is he forgiven? And that's one of his major, what I mean, I guess plot points in his head, for himself. Like, how can he progress, if he doesn't have God's blessing, basically.
Yeah. I mean, kind of similar to Jose. And kind of, I almost take like an invert approach to kind of how you're explaining, Javier. It's definitely both are valid ways of doing this, but because I do have some limited space, I like to introduce that character flaw quickly in the first issue with somewhere towards the end. But like what I did with Wolf Hunter is I did half the issue is groundwork for that flaw, but it doesn't present that way. It's something where you're seeing it and like, oh, this is something kind of like a Top Gun thing, right? It's a air jockey gets shot down, and they're itching to get back into it. They're going to be like ready to get back to them to fight and do all stuff, but then he gets a different job, and then at some point in your end, you see the character, and the second they think about conflict, their hands start shaking, and you're like, that snap moment of, oh, they have combat PTSD now. Like they're not a hot dog yet. But yeah, it's taking that moment of you do have some limited space and kind of using that same space that you're doing character exposure, but just looking at the audience saying, think fast and throw the flaw at them.
Right.
We have a question from Cassisi. Do you find that creating a vice or weakness for a character is incredibly difficult? Do you find it difficult as a creator to separate the weakness or vice from yourself, visually or literally?
Oh, wow. Okay, I can say that I'm full of flaws, so I just pick one.
Yeah.
And just amp it up. Just amp it up by double. Right. I don't know. Let's say collecting, right? You see all the books I got back there, right? Mm-hmm. Well, drive that to a negative conclusion, exaggeration. I collect skulls of people I've killed. Boom, I'm a villain. Or I collect, the weapons of those I vanquish in combat. I'm a warlord. So any trait, if you exaggerate it to a positive or negative extension, it makes it simple. It also helps me in my storytelling because it's easy to remember. Oh, wait a minute. This character in this spot after defeating the villain would do like a Street Fighter celebration, like, yeah, and then take the guy's weapon, or take the guy's head. Yeah. So that's the way I would approach
it.
Yeah. So every character I've ever made actually has a flaw that I have. You know what I mean? Like I said, when I made Chance, my Western character, having a conviction of faith and whatnot, that was me. You know what I mean? When I was creating that character. When I made Max, my lightning kid, he that was me writing about how I got bullied in school. You know what I mean? Like, not to be all weird or whatever, but yeah, like that was how I wish I could have handled the bullying that I have in school to me. You know what I mean? That's my character is handling that as I wish I would have. Wish I would have been able to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then obviously there's repercussions for your actions because he violently hits people with lightning, and there's repercussions for his actions. He knows that, and he is punished, and then more zaniness happens, and he kind of has like a moment of realization at the end, like a moment of clarity, where like he's like, listen, I know what I did was wrong, and I probably should stop, but there are people getting hurt, and I know I can stop it. So yeah, like those like flaws, like those like getting bullied, you know what I mean? That, or having you're questioning your own faith. Those are absolutely came from me when I created my characters.
Yeah, like I've done both. Where I've done a vice that hasn't come from me, but it's come from something that I've had to study. But usually, for most part, it's either from me or someone that I know in my close life that has dealt something, that same issue, either to a minor extent or to like it presents in a different way. The moment I came up with Willard's hand trimmer was actually at Full Sail. We were crossing, me and my buddy Garrett were crossing the street. And Garrett was a Marine Raider, and then my background, I was like, I wasn't quite the microchip to his Punisher, but I was a security contractor. So we had a moment where we're crossing the street and the car backfires. He immediately has to sit down, and I notice my hand is now trimmering. And I'm like, all right, this is going to a character.
Right.
So that's it's usually pulling something that I've experienced or a friend of mine has experienced, or if I'm like, if it's something, or like if I'm touching on a character that has some sort of, I've had a story where a character has like had a drug addiction or some form of psychosis, which I've not personally experienced, but I will spend a ton of time researching that to make sure that I handle it correctly and in a way that is authentic.
Right. And that's important, being authentic in a comic.
Yeah.
And that's your responsibility as a creator that's your responsibility as a creator to be honest with your audience.
Right.
You do have to do your due diligence. You don't want to insult the person who's reading this and been through it and be like, that's totally non-believable.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Especially with something that deep, that big, you know what I mean? Like combat PTSD and whatnot. Especially with something like that, you really want the reader, if they've been through that, to be able to like, whoa, like, yeah, dude, I get that. You know what I mean? So
and do have roll them out of the comment as well. If you enter the flaw early, readers are alerted as to what to look for. So I was doing the teacher's notes bolded. So that's some concern that makes them care for characters. Giving some sort of character flaw in there, so then the readers now have like an ongoing concern about like how is this going to affect things going forward. So we have them with
that,
So we have the moment like the end of issue 1 of Wolf Hunter where Willard looks at his hand and it's trembling, but then something happens, they snapped into action. However, as that happens, going into issue 2, there is a moment where it comes back to bite him, where he is in an active pain, but he's now hesitating. He's like, am I ready to do this again? And that causes him to fumble the ball, essentially. And so, but by presenting that level of concern, now the readers are there's a level of care, and that like the emotional health of this character, like it's a moment of like, don't kill the dog, right? If you harm the dog, then all of a sudden like the emotions are out the window. Everyone is angry.
And there you go. You make a franchise out of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. The idea is you just want to have the dog in like in a constant stranglehold, so everyone's just kind of like,
Just put a dog in a stranglehold. Did you actually say that?
Exactly. It's you gotta have Chekhov. It's you gotta have not Chekhov. Well, I guess Chekhov's dog, right? If the dog is presented somewhere in the first page, it must be killed by the third chapter.
That's terrible.
Or at least there needs to be some sort of like red herring with the dog or something like that. You need to have some sort of emotional stake to like something where like, understand like at any point this character's flaw could cause them to fumble and break everything. And that is now the teetering point for them. Because I mean, if Superman didn't have a teetering point, then every Superman story would be the same from 1930 onwards.
I mean, it was.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the end of a Superman story if he doesn't stay here like this, finishing the lesson.
Right. Exactly. Oh man.
Buy war bonds.
Right. Can that be a flaw, Tim? Can that be a flaw? I can't help us not work on.
I mean, you do have like overly moralizing characters where that's definitely like the point where like they're impossible to work with because they're just so like I'm just going. I mean, kind of when you look at depending on the writer of Justice League, that is kind of Superman's flaws. Everyone's like, I am so tired of you, Soups. Shut up. We're trying to do a job here.
Hey, the guys.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Superman can afford the bandwidth. What's going to
Yeah.
hurt him? Yeah, he can pontificate and say, "Stop hiding in the shadows. Let me shine a bright light on you, Batman." Woo. Right? And Green Lantern, just think. Use your willpower. What are you doing fronting? And yeah, he can afford to do that. The other ones don't, because they're mostly humanoid and can die easily.
Mm-hmm. That's my favorite antithesis of that. That I think it's a flaw, but for me, it's a different positive trait because I refuse to see it as a flaw. That Dr. Nemesis and X Club. He's like morals, throw them out the window. We don't need them here.
Of course you would. Of course you would think that's a positive. Wow.
I mean, if at any point the character's choices have landed them getting a hyper-intelligent squid glued to their brain because it gives them more science juice. Oh, God.
Wow.
Science juice. This is fun. I've never heard of science juice. Sounds really
Dr. Nemesis
adult.
is such an odd character.
He's such a wild dude. I was explaining to my partner actually recently the Dr. Nemesis lore. I'm like, okay, he's a guy who didn't imagine a guy who worked in World War II, was working for the Nazis, didn't realize he was working for the Nazis, was then told he was working for the Nazis, became a Nazi hunter. Then it's like, you know what? Rogue science belongs to everyone.
Right.
Wow.
It was like,
Science run amok. That's who he is. Okay.
Yeah.
He's like, you know, we're make a bunch of wild science, and everyone gets it. Hey, QB. Go here. Well, if you have your Tuesday show, if you have your Tuesday show bingo card, you can scratch off Tim talks about a obscure X-Men side series.
Right. Yep. At some point, Joe talks about Green Lantern, DC stuff. Yeah. We got a checklist.
Yeah. Well, as the show goes on, as Javier continues to integrate himself with the show, we will develop his own checklist here.
Right. We'll add you the bingo card.
Yeah. I'm a creature of habits. I'll talk about the same stuff.
First thing I thought I heard was science.
You totally heard science juice. Absolutely.
Yeah, if you look at my Facebook banner, I believe it is still currently. So, yeah, it's one of the more unhinged Dr. Nemesis quotes. Eat viral liquefaction, unethically cloned carbon waste. I'll put my science in you. I'll put my science in all of you.
That was the character that was in white. He had a mask and a fedora?
Yeah.
Okay. He had a gun that would shoot like needles?
Yes.
He was like a hypodermic needle gun, yeah.
Yeah. He's kind of if you take like the Artificer Alchemist class from like D&D with like the random potion table, that's kind of what that gun is, where it's just random serums he concocts.
My bad. I had somebody commission me a drawing of the Answer.
Oh yes.
Which is a white suit, fedora, and no face. It's weird. It's like the opposite of the question, which Steve Ditko created, later on or before. I don't know the timeline of that.
Yes. But the question is also one of those characters that I appreciate. The more unhinged the writers get with it, where it's like, what if the character is like so inquisitive and paranoid that they don't understand the reality they themselves are in? A lot of the Charleston stuff, when they got picked up by different writers, they just kind of ran with it. It was like, you know what? I'm here for it.
Right.
I'm just trying to figure out the character that truly faces the consequences of his own actions. It's got to be Spidey.
Oh yeah.
He's constantly confronted with the results. People are dead. People hate me. They're chasing me. The cops are after me. The newspaper is after me. I mean, my girlfriend is cheating or something, or thinks I'm cheating. It's one
of those things. Also, like, Spidey's one of those characters that took him 60 years to age 10, but that's one of those ones where you did get to understand the growth of life with him, and like how he continually, positively and negatively affected things like, graduating, starting a family, losing a family, starting a business, losing a business, getting your body swapped with your arch nemesis,
finding 200 different alternate versions of himself.
And spider vampires.
Right.
I mean, that would break me. You're me, but different. In this universe, I'm a artist. In some other universe, you're a superhero. What?
Yeah.
Why is my life not your life?
Yeah.
See, I'm pointing at.
And that's right.
Spider-Man meme.
That's kind of the. I think that's kind of the whole point of was it Peter B. Parker? You know what I mean? In the first Spider-Verse movie, was like, why? Like, my life was going great, and then it went to crap. Like, why is my life not like this? You know what I mean? Like, learning that you can't, basically, not that he purposely ran away from it, but you can't run away from it. You have to kind of face it and whatnot. But yeah, my favorite Spider-Man storyline is the one with Carnage, and like he teams up with Eddie Brock, and Venom, and in the end he ends up hitting like sound system because Carnage was going to kill somebody at a concert, and he hits the sound system, like amps up the decibels and whatnot. And Eddie and Venom and Carnage are both sitting there like spraying off of their people, and Venom's like, hit it harder, like hit it louder, like, the parent can take it, right? And so it was enough to pull Carnage off of Cassidy, and they kind of trapped it up and whatnot. And then he didn't let it go for Venom. He's like, "Oh, you can drop it now." He's like, "No, I can't. Sorry." And at the end, freaking J. Jonah Jameson's like, Captain America wouldn't have like gone back on his promise and whatnot. And Spider-Man like quickly turned on his heels, was like, Captain America wouldn't have teamed up with freaking Venom. He would have figured out a better way out of it. I'm not him.
Yeah.
Like, just that, like that ending of that storyline alone was like probably one of my, and I'm not a huge Spider-Man fan, but like it's definitely like one of my favorite Spider-Man like storylines because of that.
Yeah.
Just admitting that I did not make the perfect plan to get out of this. I did what I thought was right, and it may be wrong, but I did what I could.
I kind of the entire like Spidey family and all that, like newer stuff. Keenan Black. Venom beats him finally by joining in with the Life Force. However, then ends up turning into Eddie becoming an absent father again because, like, sorry, I keep on getting lured into every problem the universe ever has. And he has to just like split from it because he's like, this is ruining my entire life.
Although, side note, design-wise, I actually liked Flash Thompson with Venom as opposed to like classic Eddie.
Yeah.
Just because he had less spikes, he had basically made armor on it. Yeah, I always liked that design.
Yeah.
And that was allowing him to walk too. He had lost both legs.
Yeah.
Yeah, Agent Venom. Yeah.
Well, let me share that here real quick.
Nice. Dude, you hammered that out in like minutes.
Well, I mean, I could do a better job with more time, but I need to have something finished fairly quickly for the show tonight.
Right.
Sure.
I'll plan it out a little bit better. And maybe I can take a suggestion or two and just sketch it out. Have it pre-sketched, and then next time I show up, I'll just finish it over here.
Yeah.
I like it.
Maybe that's what she's doing. I haven't gone through and painted my Marvel Strike Force minis yet, but maybe I'll.
Tim, I'd have to have Javier give you some drawing lessons, buddy.
There you go.
You've been working on your weeks. Did you give up on your weeks?
Which unfortunately, with things happening with life, I kind of dropped the ball on that.
Pause. Put it on pause.
Yeah, yeah. Who knew that litigation can get in the way of life?
Right. Tim has been going like every week, focusing on something new when it comes to like drawing and whatnot to like better like improve his skill.
Yeah, I've been watching shorts on YouTube all the time now. I'm picking up little things. I think it's Proco and something else. Drawing hips and hair and eyeballs and stuff. It's like I always get a little nugget of something out of it. It's like, oh, okay, that's why that person does it like that.
Yeah.
You know, emulating the people that you admire, at least in my case for art, is one thing, but understanding the why they did it that way helps me to do it in my own way too. That way I don't look at a drawing and say, oh yeah, that's Barry Windsor Smith's eyes and mouth. Damn it. Yeah.
I'm fine when I'm the one in the I'm the one with the letters asking people to please do their jobs. I'm good. I'm just hopefully be getting other people on their game as well. I just recently came across the like YouTube short on when people are sitting like how like thinking about how like their rib cage rolls and like how that design like influences how you draw the torso and stuff.
Yeah, this guy breaks it down in angles too, like just 90 degrees and 85 degrees, and which is the kind of stuff that I wish I had known, because now I can constantly remember 90 degrees. Oh, okay, that's why that's why when I contort it too much, it's not appropriate for this character, but it's totally appropriate for Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, I will say one of the and you can check the box off, guys. But one of the fun things I learned at the Cuber School was that we had to take an animation class, and then we had to animate like a sack of flour. So like the turns and bends, that this flower would have, like that honestly helped with torso positions and whatnot when it came to drawing figures.
And that's flour, a sack of flour, not a real like daisy deal.
No, digitally, not digitally, I'm sorry, like physically, we had to draw a stack of flour, and then we had to turn it. You know what I mean? You had to turn it like that. So
wow.
Yeah,
it
was interesting. And then you had us do it with first, like draw a box, like like a cereal box kind of box, and then turn it. You know what I mean? And I'll be honest, that wasn't easy for me to like figure out like the corners when you turn it. You know what I mean? One end's still facing the other kind of facing. That was hard. Like, it took me forever to do that. But like once you figure that out, and then you implement that into the stack of flour, it actually made it like it made sense because that's how the body would twist. You get that, the turns and like where like the torso and was it? I'm gonna draw a blank. Your obliques would turn, and so like those having a greater angle to them when you're spinning. Yeah, like now on paper it makes more sense. So I can actually draw I'll draw that out. You know what I mean? And then from there, I can clean it up and make it actually look like bodies and whatnot.
That was the lesson that took me the longest to learn. The connection between the hips and the torso. Because too many times I'd model it after toys, and toys aren't realistic.
Yes, there's no real bend. You know what I mean? There's no the idea you honestly can't really do like a real like natural contrapposto position with an action figure. You know what I mean? Because it's just not going to come out the way it's supposed to. With the hip twisted and whatnot, like angled and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, we are coming to our appointed time here. So I will grab last thoughts on making compelling characters. Any last thoughts that either of you guys have on things you wanted to hit on, other thoughts you had on what goes into creating a compelling hero?
Okay, compelling hero needs mystery.
Yeah.
Needs a very obvious motivation. And also has to fall. Has to have the ability to fall down just like I do.
Yeah.
If there's no potential to fail as a person, then the character at the time we're seeing them is already at their peak. And we live in the hope that we are never at our peak at any age. There's always another lesson to be learned, another lesson to teach, and growth for us. That's just me guessing.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's good. That any story you read or any movie you watch, like when your protagonist or your hero falls, you're hitting the crest of the story. Now it's going to like start going towards the final goal or final outcome of said movie or said story. And I mean, now, okay, now it's about to get good because the hero is going to get back up and like the lesson is learned and now implemented.
If you are familiar with the hero's journey, that is known as the setback or the false death. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we should probably revisit that at some point. It's been a while, so we could probably do a hero's journey revisit in one of these episodes coming up.
Isn't that also like is it Campbell that created? Yeah, something similar. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just Campbell did the hero's journey, which is essentially just broke down Greek myth and a bunch of science fiction fantasy, and then presented it as these are just things that he observed. They're not necessarily, as with all writing or creating advice, don't necessarily take it as gospel, but understand that like it works for a reason.
Right.
Yeah, and those guys
and
in ancient times,
you can substitute in any story, almost any story. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
No matter which angle it's at. I think in school we broke down Star Wars. Into like angles and like characters and whatnot for the hero's journey. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, and those ancient guys, I mean, it was either tell a compelling story or I'm kicking you out of my castle. So
right.
Yeah. So we'll probably I'll put it in the calendar. We'll do a revisit on the hero's journey at some point. Next week, though, we do have a guest. We have Rick Offenberger from First Comics News, also the writer and publisher of G-Man Comics. And if you want to, check out Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern on those specific days. We, of course, are 8 p.m. West Coast time, since we are West Coast, Best Coast. I mean... the two of us are. Used to be 3, now it's 2. But we'll see you 8 p.m. Pacific time next week. But until that time, it's just it's actually, what do you mean if you want to? If you feel so compelled to, if you failed your wisdom saving throw, this counts as the command person spell. If you fail your wisdom saving throw, you are compelled to watch Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday.
That's right.
Yes. Rain. Javier, do you know how we end it here on the Tuesday show?
No idea how you end it.
Okay. So it is tradition here that when we give people where they can catch us next time, and we tell them what's going to happen next time, our ending phrase is, until that time, make mine Silverline.
Make mine Silverline. Yep.
Yeah. So we usually stumble into it and usually end up harmonizing on like the final syllable. So the sloppier, the better. All right. So we'll be back 8 p.m. Pacific time next week on Tuesday. But until that time,
make mine Silverline.
Hey, I'm G-Rod. Make mine Silverline. You heard it.